Recording.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the council meeting of Otonabee-South Monaghan on November 22nd. I will call the meeting to order at 5:03. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest from any of the issues that we will be dealing with tonight? Councillor Powers?
Thank you, Mayor Joe. Yes, I would like to declare a pecuniary interest with regards to a closed session item related to waste disposal.
So noted, and you have filed the appropriate paperwork with the clerk?
I have, yes.
Perfect. So we once we in a closed session, Councillor Powers, you will leave the meeting, and then we'll call you back in when we deal with the rest of the closed session agenda. Okay, so I'd like a motion, please, to move into closed session for litigation or potential litigation matters that is subject to solicitor-client privilege. I see Councillor Allen and Deputy Mayor Clark. All in favor? It's carried. Okay, Heather, we're good to go. That's more of a question than a statement. Okay, thank you. All right, good evening, everyone. We will call our council, the rest of our council meeting, our regular council meeting to order at 6:03. We're going to, so we were in closed session. We have nothing to report coming out of closed. So we're going to start off with announcements. I have three announcements actually tonight. The first two deal with the retirement notices that were given to us by a couple of very senior members of our staff. The first is Peter McFarland. Peter McFarland has been a member of the Public Works for almost 30 years as Otonabee-South Monaghan, and prior to that, he worked for the Township of South Monaghan. So he is well known and well regarded over in the South Monaghan ward. Peter has announced his retirement schedule for November 30th. We certainly want to thank Peter very much for his work, primarily behind the grader, where he did his very best to keep the South Monaghan residents happy. And we wish him all the best in his retirement. The second retirement notice was given to us by Fire Chief Ted Bryant. Ted is going to retire effective January the 31st. Ted wears a lot of hats. He's going to retire as fire chief, as the community emergency management coordinator, the bylaw officer, and the 911 coordinator. Ted has worked for our township for almost 47 years. So between the two men who are about to retire, we are seeing close to 90 years of dedicated duty leaving this township. And council, rather than lament the fact that these men are leaving, they have every right to leave and retire. I think what we need to do is be happy that we had them here for as long as we did. They devoted a significant portion of their lives to Otonabee-South Monaghan and the residents. And we are really appreciative of that. We wish both of you guys much health, much happiness, and a lengthy retirement. And you know, I'm not sure what's the appropriate way to sum up my words, but I do know they need to include the words thank you. So from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of all council, I want to thank you very much for the many years of service of this township. And if there is the opportunity, this strictly is between the two members who are retiring, but if there is the opportunity for further words, more lengthy speech, then I look forward to that. And all members of council, I'm sure, will be involved in that as well. But anyway, thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Clark. You've got your hand up. You want to say something? Go ahead.
I would just ask that everybody take themselves off mute for a round of applause for the two retirees.
Round of applause for the retirees. Thank you very much. The third announcement is a nice one, and this came right out of the blue. I received a phone call last week from a local artist by the name of Paul Chester. Paul has Paul lives and has a studio on Settlers Line, and he draws a lot of his inspiration in Paul's words. He draws a lot of inspiration from the natural beauty that he finds in this township. And he happened to be looking out over the hill south of Keene at the marsh, at the mouth of Indian River and Sugar Island, just beyond that. He was struck by it, so he did a 2-foot by 4-foot oil painting of Sugar Island. And he was going to add it to his list of paintings and put it in a gallery and sell it. And he thought, no, this is wrong. It's a painting of the township that I've grown to know and love. It's a perfect example of the natural beauty. So he wants to give it to our township. So it was a wonderful gesture. I certainly thank Paul. I told him that it just wasn't good enough just to receive the painting, that we wanted to make a little more deal out of it than that. So at the first opportunity, hopefully in the new year, when we can resume in-person council meetings, we're going to invite Paul Chester to it. Paul can formally give the painting to the township and members of council. We'll do a little photo op and a media release and make a big deal out of it, because we should. But keep your fingers crossed. We can resume in-person meetings in January. That's what will happen. In the meantime, the picture looks great hanging in my family room there. So I'll be bringing it over to the township office the next day or two, and we can do a more formal handover later. Anyway, that's it for announcements. We're going to move down now to the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Seeing none, I'd like a motion, please, that we adopt the agenda for tonight's meeting. Deputy Mayor Clark, Councillor Howie, all in favor? Carried. Okay, we have no minutes from council, no committee or board minutes. We do have one delegation. I'd like to welcome a couple of familiar faces on the screen, Ian Mudd and Keziah Holden, who are going to give us an update on the county official plan. Good evening, gentlemen, ladies.
Morning, Mayor, or good afternoon, or good evening, whatever you want to call it. It's been a long day, so we'll carry on. Mayor Taylor, thank you for inviting us to your meeting tonight to give you a brief update on a project that's been underway for quite some time. It's the update to the county official plan. I have with me tonight, as you mentioned, Keziah Holden. She's our senior planner at the county, and she's going to cover the first couple of slides, but I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge a lot of credit in the work that Keziah has been doing. She's been working away in the background, pretty much the project lead on this, ghostwriting the document behind the scenes, and basically keeping the project in motion, ranging for all of our technical advisory committee meetings, and also the minutes for those meetings, taking notes with the input from all of our TAC members. And so we're very appreciative of the work that she's been doing to date. So I'll let her lead with the first couple of slides in the presentation. And Heather, if you could flip to the next slide, please.
Okay, yeah, so this project has been ongoing for a number of years now, but since we started it up, every township in the county has made a commitment to join the official plan. So there will be one official plan for the entire county of Peterborough. Our technical advisory committee, or the TAC as we refer to it, and it will be referred to as that throughout this presentation. It is made up of township staff, county staff, and staff from both Curve Lake and Hiawatha First Nations. We've had 32 TAC meetings to date, and we have at least one more scheduled for the remainder of this year. We've done 4 update reports to county council and 10 focus reports to county council. So those focus reports have each covered a different topic area and the legislative requirements of the provincial policy statement and growth plan. Earlier this year, we did 3 public surveys that sought feedback on policies related to live, work, and play themes. And I think collectively across the 3 surveys, we had over 1,000 responses. So we consider that a big success. The Natural Heritage System mapping, the sample was sent to the province for pre-approval last year, and we're currently working with them to province to further refine that mapping. The OP land use schedule review is underway and nearing completion with all townships. The TAC has also done significant policy drafting and review. So by the time this official plan draft is out there, the TAC members will have reviewed every single policy in the new document. And Hemson Consulting is currently working on the growth management and land needs analysis, and that's nearing completion. Ian will touch on that a little bit later in the presentation. So how are we keeping people informed? Mostly through the county's website. So we do have a specific website set up for the official plan project. And all minutes from our TAC meetings are on that website. Links to all reports to county council are published there. And any news releases we have are pushed through the website. So members of the public can subscribe to the web page, and once we update that website, an email is sent to any subscribers just notifying that there have been changes made, together with a brief description of what those changes were. And right now, I think we have over 140 people to subscribe to that page. So that's a really quick and easy way for us to push out those updates. TAC members carry the responsibility of keeping local councils informed, either through updates to their council directly or providing copy of the TAC minutes and reports that go to county council. So that kind of varies by municipality. Each township sort of has their own approach to that.
Thanks, Sai. So I'll jump in here with the rest of the slide deck. So as with any project, we started this project back in 2017, and we had hoped to have it finished off probably around the 2019-2020 mark. But shortly after we initiated the project, the province released a new growth plan, which kind of turned things on its head. It introduced a lot of new policy. And so every time, we move forward with this project, as I've noted here, it kind of feels like one step forward and two steps back. So shortly after the 2017 growth plan was released, we went through a provincial election, and lo and behold, the new government decided they were going to change the 2017 growth plan. So we were trying to work away in the background, but we had to put a lot of the project related to the provincial policies on hold as we waited for this new growth plan to come out. And so we kept working away in the background with more of the local policies, things that weren't affected by a larger provincial policy. So we had a 2019 growth plan released by the province. And then the following year in 2020, we had a new provincial policy statement. So we've had a lot of policy change happen in a short period of time. And some of the policies that we had written, we had to go back and review it against the new provincial policy, the new growth plan. So that's been a bit of a challenge through the process, to say the least. We also are required to send some mapping off to the province to get pre-approval. Under the new growth plan, we have to show a natural heritage system in the document. We sent that off last December. We just got a response last month from the province after we were chasing after them for a number of months. We were down to contacting them every 2 weeks, hoping that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And it eventually did, and it provided us with a response that we weren't overly happy with after 11 months. So we have since met with the provincial representatives again, and we think we're working our way through a solution, and we've provided them some revisions that they've indicated that they would be supportive of. So we're working through that process. Also, another delay and setback, obviously, we had this great thing called COVID-19 and a pandemic, and we went from meeting once a month at the county offices with our TAC to moving to virtual meetings. And I'm sure, as you know yourself, when you move into that environment, and we have like 15 people on our committee, and you're all looking at documentation and mapping, it doesn't run as smoothly as it does in person, and you just don't have those conversations as they don't flow as nicely virtually as they do in person. So we found that as a bit of a setback. And also at the county level, and I know all of the townships as well, that there's been an incredible upswing in planning applications during that time. So we've all been busy with subdivision applications, official plan amendments, I know rezonings, minor variances at your level. And so a lot of the TAC members have been pulled in different directions, trying to process applications at their own levels as well as ours. And some of the attendance at our meetings have been a bit spotty because of that because of that work demand. And lastly, we've actually had a really big turnover in our TAC members. In fact, we've had a turnover from every single township except for Cabmonaghan and Asphodel Norwood. And when I think of your township alone, we were dealing with Jamie Hofling, and then Jamie left, and then we were dealing with Barb Waldron, and then Barb left, and now we're dealing with Ken Scullion. So for your municipality alone, you've had 3 different members as part of our TAC over time. And you know, they're obviously having to come up to speed with the project when they jump on board with the TAC. I've provided here a timeline that we presented to County Council earlier this year. And it briefly shows as we work through the project, we're obligated to have this plan now finished and adopted by July 1st. That's in the provincial legislation of 2022. So as we've worked through the project, we've pretty well hit everything bang on here. We just had a meeting today with Brian Weir, our Director of Planning, and Kazai and myself to talk about the fourth quarter. And we seem to be on track. We might be a couple of week delay with some of these things, but we're definitely on track. 2022 is going to be a release of the draft document. We're going to be looking at public consultation, open houses. And so in this environment that we're currently working in, we were just doing some brainstorming on how we're going to move the project forward as we release this to the public. Get the next slide there, please. So as Kazai mentioned, right now we're undertaking a growth management study and a lands needs analysis. So this is a specific requirement of the growth plan. And there is a requirement that we have to follow a specific methodology. So this is pretty complicated process, and County Council agreed that it's an important part of the process too. And they agreed that we should go out to an RFP. Hemson Consulting was the successful company that bid on the project. They've done a lot of work on the growth plan and Schedule 3 analysis for the province. So we were glad to have them join the project. So they are completing the lands needs analysis. They're evaluating the suitability of greenfield and intensification targets. And we're also looking at new alternative targets for some of our areas, and I'll get into that in a minute. They'll also look at recommendations to County Council with population and employment allocations for each municipality, development and recommendations for a preferred growth option for all the municipalities, and they'll look at analysis of constraints of those preferred growth options. Identification of excess lands. So this is something new that's in the growth plan. Some municipalities we may find when we look at the growth projections, we actually have too much land allocated for growth for the next 30 years. So the province requires that where we identify we have excess land, we have to essentially put a hold on those lands. And so Hemson is doing a lot of work in that regard to determine if we have any excess lands designated throughout the county. They're also going to prepare policies to implement the preferred growth scenario, including policy pertaining to achievement of the intensification targets. And we're trying to also obviously keep in mind the nature of our existing character of our existing communities. A lot of the growth plan legislation that's out there is very highly urban oriented. You're seeing in our service municipalities now, the 4 serviced municipalities in the county that have full services. You're seeing the type of development that you're used to seeing in the GTA. You're seeing very small lots, high density, a lot of townhouse development. We're seeing 3-story walk-ups. These historically have not been the forms of development we've had in Peterborough County, and they are quickly becoming the norm. Next slide, please. So what I've done here in the next couple of slides is I've just taken this directly from the Hemson PowerPoint that they provided to County Council on October 29th of this year. So the first one is looking at the forecasted growth throughout the county, and it's looking at the allocation of the population throughout the county. So for your municipality in 2006, you had a population of about 6,800. In 2011, you actually lost some people. You were down to about 6,600 people. And then in the 2016 census, you were up again about just over 6,600 people. So what this is looking at for your particular municipality, for Otonabee-South Monaghan, is the allocated growth over the next 30 years is going to be about 9% of the entire growth in the county. It's looking at a growth of about 1,790 people over that 30-year term. It's important to note that this is a snapshot right now. The growth allocation and this whole lands needs study is projected that these will be updated, every 5 or every 10 years. So the legislation requires us to look out 30 years, so to do projections to 2051. But obviously, over that ensuing 30 years, there's going to be some changes in growth. And when you go through one of these studies, it lets you sort of take a step back, rejig, look at how development has happened, where the growth pressures have occurred, and whether or not the projections that we've done have been accurate, or do we need to reset. So, so for your particular municipality, as I said, you're looking at 9% growth. As you look at this chart, you'll see that 2 other municipalities are getting quite a share of the growth. Monaghan has had a lot of development pressure over the last, I'd say about the last 5 years, and they're situated in the, as you know, in the southwest corner of the county, adjacent to the 115 and close to the 407. So there's a lot of growth pressure there. They're the first leap over the green belt in the Oak Ridges Moraine, and so that's where we're seeing a lot of the growth pressure happening. Selwyn Township also has a lot of growth pressure. Historically, they've been a municipality with a lot of growth. And recently, we've seen a lot of growth pressure in Asphodel Norwood, in the village of Norwood. We've had a lot of subdivision growth there as well. So you're seeing the majority of the growth happening in our service settlement areas. Next slide, please. So when you look at allocating growth, the next step is, okay, what type of housing are you going to have? What are you looking at for the types of units? So for Otonabee-South Monaghan, again, you're looking at about 9% of all the housing units over the next 30 years. And Hempson has equated that to about 900 new housing units for your municipality. So that's a pretty big number over the type of growth that you've seen previously. It should be noted that through this study, Hempson is projecting that every municipality is going to see growth that they've never seen before. Everybody is growing. The projections are positive for each municipality within the county. Again, you can see that quite a lion's share of the growth. We're looking at Asphodel Norwood, Selwyn, and Monaghan, and again, they have the lion's share of the population allocation. So obviously, you need the housing. Another thing that we're going to look at, that Hempson is looking at, is the type of housing that we're going to see. Historically, as I mentioned before, we've had a lot of single detached homes, has essentially been the type of growth that we've seen throughout the county. But we're definitely looking at a variety of options, specifically in our 4 urban centers that have the full municipal services. We're looking at not only single detached homes, but way more semis, townhouses, and apartment type growth. Next slide, please.
Ian, we got quite a bit more ground to cover tonight, and we're running over the 10-minute delegation limit. I'd like you to wrap it up if you could as quickly as possible.
I'll be very quick. I only have a couple of slides left. So this one deals with employment. That's something else we have to look at. So we're looking at employment growth of about 810 jobs in your municipality over the next 30 years. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick snapshot of what the outcome was of the October 29th meeting. Council has agreed with the allocation, growth allocation numbers that Hempson has come up with. And we're looking for an alternative intensification target. Next slide, please. And so our next steps in this growth management is seeking approval of that intensification target. Then we'll complete the lands needs analysis for the greenfield development. So that's how much acreage would be left for a subdivision growth outside of our built urban boundary. We would be looking at any settlement area boundary adjustments and also look at where we're going to locate employment within the municipality. So that's our slide deck for you. We're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Hey, thank you very much, Ian, because I know it's difficult to try to wrap up 4 or 5 years of intense work in 10 minutes, and I appreciate you trying.
No problem.
Questions from members of council? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Clerk, go ahead.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Ian. I'll be very brief, and I can shoot questions off after. Just right out of the gate here, Ian, wondering with the growth plan changes, with the changings of staff around the municipalities, this deadline of July, and how the fall election, is going to have any impact. We're supposed to have this through by July 1st, you say, 2022. If we don't meet that deadline, what are the implications, or how are you feeling about that deadline?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, the province set the deadline to July 1st. In fact, the Minister of Municipal Affairs sent a letter out to all municipalities earlier this year and said under no circumstances would they grant any extensions to that date. So they've drawn their line in the sand and said, this is when your work is to be completed. As far as what would happen if we don't meet that date, as our consultant told County Council the other day, there's not a growth plan jail that you go to if you don't achieve things. But yeah, it's an obligation that we have. It's a requirement of the province, and we're working towards it. I think a lot of the policy changes that you're going to see, a majority of the plan, the changes are all provincially driven. So the province dictates so much that we have to have in the plan that there's now very little wiggle room for any sort of local autonomy as far as policy direction that way.
And just quick follow-up, if I may, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. So Ian, the policies that will be put in place in the new official plan, they are official once the province has signed them off. Is that correct?
That's correct. So we would adopt the official plan, and we have to send that off to the province, and the province is the approval authority for the new official plan.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Allen, I think I saw your hand up, Mark.
You did. Thanks. Thanks, Mayor Taylor. Just a quick question with regard to the reference to the heritage mapping. I'm not exactly familiar what within heritage mapping, and I wondered if I could just have a quick explanation to that as far as what we're waiting on.
Sure. So through you, Mayor Taylor, the province came out with a natural heritage system. It was a schedule that they had appended to the document, and we're required to show it in the official plan. The problem is that for Peterborough County, at least the north half of Peterborough County, they showed the whole north of the county as shaded to green. And anytime you want to do any form of development, there's a requirement for studies. And so we took exception to the mapping because we went through a natural heritage project with the province and the city of Kawartha Lakes about 6 years ago, did a natural heritage system for Peterborough County, and we were going to adopt it. And then they came out with this new map, and it was vastly different than what we had proposed. And we had worked with them and our staff to develop it in the first place. So the legislation does say you can refine their mapping. So that has been our approach to take that mapping that we previously did, provide it to the province and say, look, we've gone through a pretty extensive exercise here. This is mapping that we're very supportive of. We had a lot of the conservation authorities, environmental groups, etc., help define this mapping, and we want to use it as our refinement. So the province came back. They weren't necessarily sold on it. They want some additional lands in the north identified. Our counter offer was, well, there's a lot of crown land up there. So what if we use the natural heritage system that we developed through courses naturally connected, and we add all the crown land in the north? So they seem to be open to those discussions. We had a bit of a positive response from them, but still, I think quite a bit of work before they're willing to sign off on the mapping.
Thanks, Ian.
Thank you. Councillor Powers, go ahead, Nick.
Thanks, Mayor Taylor. I do have a couple of questions. Just, I'm trying to sort of get my head around a couple of pieces. One is the growth intensification targets that was brought up during the county council on October the 29th. So the province, as I understand it, I'm just sort of trying to get any new growth or new residential, 40% of that should happen in designated serviced areas. And we're saying that within our landscape and the planning and the zoning that we have within our municipality, that's just not a feasible number that we can achieve. And so we're asking to reduce that to 15%. So in essence, if we look at it from the township of Otonabee-South Monaghan, the 900 homes over the next 30 years, we would only say that 15% of those are going to end up in our designated serviced areas. The remaining 85% will be in the rural agricultural area. Am I understanding that correctly?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So no, not 100%. And let me explain the difference to you. Our 4 service municipalities being Lakefield, Millbrook, Havelock, and Norwood, when the legislation came out in 2006, the province created what was called a built boundary. So they looked at those existing 4 fully serviced municipalities and created a built boundary within their actual villages. And so it's within that built boundary that intensification has to happen. So that intensification number only relates to those 4 serviced settlement areas. And it's saying that 40% of all development happen within those small areas. So you'd be looking at a really, you've got environmental features in there, you have, historic buildings. So part of the argument was when we went through the study is a lot of those municipalities have come back and they said, there's absolutely no way we can achieve 40% of all of our development within that small built urban boundary. And so Hempson did a lot of the work to try and justify why we can move to 15%. And they've done a lot of that work and we'll be providing that to the province. In your particular case, in Otonabee-South Monaghan, you do not have a built urban boundary identified, but you do have obviously your identified settlement areas within the municipality. And the growth plan does direct that is where the majority of your growth should be happening, is in those service settlement areas.
Thank you, Ian.
Great. And
one more follow-up, Nick.
I've got a couple more, if that's all right, Mayor Taylor. And I think I may be having some internet issues here. I'm not sure. I'm hoping everyone can hear me.
No, the audio, Nick, is cutting in and out. So we'll do the best we can with the questions. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So I will try my best here. So the question that I do have is around OSM's role in approval or review of the official plan prior to its adoption by the province. So at what point does the township of Otonabee-South Monaghan review the proposed official plan and have input into things that are specific to our local municipality, such as growth plan items, intensification targets, things like that? Where do we as the township of Otonabee-South Monaghan, outside of the TAC, get that review completed?
Yeah. So through you, Mr. Mayor, we will be providing a draft of the document to County Council in the near future, and there'll be a report associated with that and a recommendation at that point that the document also be released to the 8 municipalities for their review and comment, and obviously released to the public as well. So that will be the opportunity for the municipality to review the document, provide comments. We're also going to be hosting a number of open houses for the public to review the document. And then there's also a requirement for a public meeting under the requirements of the act. So our goal is to get the document in your hands in the very near future. And by very near future, I'm thinking we're hoping the tail end of December or the very beginning of January to provide you, because what we don't want to do obviously is drop this document in your hands and say, okay, we need you guys to review this and comment back and show us your support within 2 weeks. That's not fair to anybody. So we realize the need to get it in your hands, to all the hands of the municipalities in the county, provide you with a few months to review the document, the ability to contact us with any questions you had, any clarification you require. So we're going to give you quite a few months to review the document.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And that's appreciated, Ian, because the city of Peterborough forwarded their draft OP to the township for review and comment. And I think, Greg, they gave us 4 weeks. 3 weeks. 3 weeks. And it's just too much information to try to review in 3 weeks' time. So we will appreciate that. Nick, did that conclude the questions you had?
Yes, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Howie, did you have your hand up earlier, Ken? No? Okay. So is there any further questions from members of council to either Ian or Keziah? Seeing none, to both of you, thank you very much for appearing at our meeting tonight and for the update. We certainly understand it's a lot of work and it's a long way from over. When the OP is at a point where it finally gets approved, my understanding is that there is no appeal. Is that correct? It goes straight to the province for approval.
Yes, so the province changed legislation a few years ago, and when you do a municipal comprehensive review, as we're doing right now, and when the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing is the approval authority, there is ultimately no appeal to that. So that can swing both ways. It means the province can also modify our plan and put things in it that we may not necessarily want. And we also, as a municipality and yourselves, you also don't have appeal rights to that. So it can be good, it can be bad. We'll see how it rolls out.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Okay, if there's nothing further, then we just need a motion to receive the delegation from the County Peterborough Planning Department with their official plan update. Councillor Allen, and the second by Councillor Powers. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Thanks again to Ian Keziah, and we will look forward to the progress.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, moving down our agenda, we're going to go to the 11.1, which is the Public Works Activity Report. And I believe Craig Brooks is part of this meeting, so I'll turn it over to Craig.
Thanks, Mayor Taylor. Good to see you, Mr. Mayor, and all of council and staff. It's always nice to see faces. I don't see a lot of your faces all the time, so it's nice to see them on the screen, a la Hollywood Squares style. So I think in the essence of time, I can move through my report reasonably quickly. But as you'll see, the highlights of the report include some of the maintenance activities that we've been doing since our last report, and those have been focused around brushing, edging, grading, and ditching. So a lot of those things were weather dependent, of course, because we've had such a wet few months. We've been having to be selective about when we do those things. We are ready for winter on the public works side of things. All the equipment and materials are on hand. And I think winter is happening as we speak outside. So that's good. At the waste transfer station, I'll highlight some of the things that are happening there. More efforts around public education with regards to clear bags, fees, and also I'll talk about the debit machine or a interact payment option that we are starting to have available at the waste transfer station. So first off, maintenance, all our fall grading is completed. With the rain that we've had recently and up until freeze up, we'll just prioritize any grading work that is required throughout the township, and we have our graders equipped, of course, to deal with those things. We are looking at, because of all the rain, we do have high water levels, and we're keeping a keen eye on the busy beavers, as you will, and sort of monitoring the impacts that they may have as we move into winter with those high water levels. Edging, you can see in my report, I've included a list of roads that have been edged, and I talked about this at my last report. I think it's a really important component to the maintenance and upkeep of our existing roads, to keep them edged and keep the water shedding off of those roads. And we've completed those, and they were done based on historical information that we have, and opposed to flooding or road deterioration. And we also looked at the cost to ongoing maintenance. So that will alleviate some of those things by having those fixed. Brushing, there's a list of 6 or 7 roads there that we've brushed. Those were to improve sight lines, and to also open them up for winter maintenance, to expose them to sunlight, to help melt the roads after we get precipitation through the winter months. And we wanted to do that to also look at reestablishing some ditches where ditches are needed, and to deal with drainage. There was some ditch work and some shoulder work that was done on the 3 roads in my report, River Road and David Fife, Scriven Road, south of County Road 2, and Island View Drive. And that was due to road damage and ditch erosion in most cases. So those have all been completed, and we've had some residents call us and thank us for the work that we've done there. So that's been great. Signage, as you know, we did some retroreflectivity testing earlier on this year, and we can continue to deploy those new signs out, and we're going to work those through the mesh system, which is the new maintenance software that we have in Public Works. So we'll be issuing those maintenance work orders for staff to go out and replace those signs on a priority basis over the next month, and continuing into 2022. And as I've outlined, seasonal maintenance will be grading and brushing as required and if possible. And as I said, we're ready for winter, and we've already been out last week to do some light sanding on some of the hard tops, and we are also working our winter operations through that mesh system as well. So road patrols are being done in mesh as we speak. Waste operations. So the waste transfer station, as I've mentioned, we are now trialing a debit transactions at the waste transfer station. It appears that we don't have any connectivity issues. We're able to do the transactions and do the end of day upload. We're going to trial that for another couple days to make sure that is a secure and reliable service. And we'll probably look to put out public notice that we are sort of offering that service going forward. So that's great as well. The reuse center, again, is up and functioning, and really thank the public for that. It seems to be a really well-used service that is provided at the waste transfer station. So thanking the public for that as well. I think I'll move the curbside pickup to the end of my report, and I'll skip ahead to water and wastewater. So we did have the water systems are operating well and normally. We did have one disruption to service on November 10th, and that was as a result of work being done on a private service at the curb stop. So it was actually on the municipality side of the curb stop, but again, it was centered around an individual's service. So we had to, Aqua had to isolate that service to do that work. And the valves that they had to isolate, they actually had to shut some water off to certain residents. And typically this would be a process by which they would do a notification to those residents. But because of the nature of the incident and because it was a little harder to isolate, it was sort of done at the time. And I did speak to Aqua after that, and they're gonna put their best efforts forward to not have that happen again and make sure that residents do get notified anytime that their service will be disrupted. So I just wanted to highlight that. But other than that, the water systems are operating very well. So to go back to curbside pickup, Otonabee-South Monaghan and Waste Connections of Canada are nearing the end of a 2-year agreement for the curbside pickup of domestic household waste. And this was done through the bylaw 2019-22. The service is going very well. The staff at Waste Connections work very well with OSM staff. And I think the growing pains, if you will, have been ironed out over the first couple of years. And because we've built an operation that's quite synergistic with Waste Connections, we thought it was an opportune time, given that this type of service is hard to come by, and given, to be quite honest, the world that we live in right now, to secure these types of services isn't by any means as easy as it was a couple of years ago. So we've presented to council for consideration tonight to enter into an agreement that will take us out another 2 years until the end of 2023. The financial impact of this contract is outlined in my report. And that is that the 2022 budget, if council is to pass this bylaw, would increase by just over $3,000. The 2021 budget was estimated at $124,395. And the proposed costing for 2022 is $127,505 and change, which is a 2.5% increase. So I have that in front of council tonight for consideration. Does anyone have any questions about my report or the bylaw?
Thank you, Craig. That's actually my line. Does anybody have any questions for Craig about his report? And I see Councillor Allen. Go ahead, Mark.
Finding the mute button. Thanks, Mayor Taylor, and thanks, Craig, for your report. I appreciate the details of the Public Works report when you present it. Most of my questions are around the 2-year agreement extension, or no bid contract, as I like to call them in the public procurement field. I'm just wondering, because I did reach out and try to get some of this information earlier and wasn't able to connect, but if you have it, do you have the information on the last time that we went to public tender for this? Because it seemed to me we did an extension or took an opportunity prior to our clear bag system coming in place to extend that contract for another couple of years to try to get through that program. And so I'm just reaching back to try to find out the last time we did go to competitive process for this. That was one of my questions. And I don't know, do you have that information, Craig or Greg?
I can certainly speak to that, and Heather, I know, has some of the information. The township, we originally tendered the curbside pickup back in 2007, and M&M Disposals were the ones that were the individual That was the name of the company at the time. And in 20, so that lasted through until 2018. And in 2018, M&M Disposal was sold to Waste Connection. So what we had to do is change the contract name because the contract was still under the old M&M Disposal's name. So back in 2019, that's when we came back with the contract that was in the name of Waste Disposal and entered into a 2-year contract with Waste Connection. So that sort of gives you a bit of the bit of the answer to your question. I think that one of the questions that the councillor posed today was, in our procurement bylaw, what are the pieces of this that would allow us to support the recommendation that we're making to you this evening? So we can, and I think they have in the past, but our new procurement bylaw that was passed in 2020 allows us to make recommendations to council under a single source requirement. And so under section 8, under single source, under C and D, that we can make recommendations to you for services that were previously acquired or would be additional to similar types of goods or services being supplied under an existing contract, under a contract extension or renewal. And so we have that ability if we feel that that's in the best interest of the municipality, and this is what we're doing here in this particular regard, is making that recommendation under section 8 of the procurement bylaw, seeing that the annualized increase for the cost of services here is 2.5% or $3,100. So that's why we did not go to the full RFP and the cost of the RFP. We felt that the benefit outweighed the cost of going to the full tendering process. So hopefully that answers some of the questions.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Greg, and thanks, Craig, for that information. I don't know if did you look, and I appreciate where we're at as far as the history with our waste provider and a company that provides a service that essentially is in partnership with us as a municipality and does a great job in doing so. I guess one of my concerns of not going to public bid is that I do often believe that the trust in the public institution comes from the transparency in our processes, and nothing is required more than a transparent procurement process. And that's kind of where I'm coming from. I wondered if, and I don't know if you had the date there, what the actual, you said it was coming up for renewal. I don't know if that's the end of the year, timing wise, which probably precludes a public procurement process for the services that would be required, obviously, in the immediate future here, coming into the closure or the end of this contract. But I guess that's what I'm asking council to consider, is that we would look for an extension that would get us through till an opportunity arises to go out to RFP or tender for this process, based on my comments tonight. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Allen. So before we move on, what you're asking is if we can simply extend the contract for enough time to allow us to go to a competitive market bid process.
It is. Thanks, Mayor Tillett. It is because, I mean, I think I stated my rationale behind it. I do believe in the public procurement process, and that transparency in our public funds and the expenditure of those funds. The benefit of that outweighs the growing pains, I guess, when it comes to making those transitions from contractor, and that may not necessarily be the case, but it does in many instances doesn't come without, I guess, growing pains when you transition from one service provider to another. But I do believe that the transparency and public expenditure of funds outweighs those growing pains. So,
Okay, what I think for us to proceed with that, we would need to find out if Waste Connections is amenable to a 1-year agreement. And I don't believe we've asked that question. So I don't know how we can proceed with this. We have them under contract till the end of the year. I'll get you in a minute, Deputy Mayor Clark. I see your hand up. I'm going to go to Greg now to ask him how we can proceed with this particular.
Mr. Mayor and members of council, and we are looking at, we want to make sure that we're transparent as well. And certainly by, coming into this particular process, that, we see this as I guess, in the best interest of the community and council, being a $3,000 increase in the cost. Correct me if I'm wrong, Heather and as well, Craig, I believe that that Waste Connections would not be interested in simply a 1-year agreement extension, and at this particular rate, it would be at a higher rate for them to consider that. So we were looking at a 2-year rate to keep so this rate of 2.5% is in the current contract, and that is what we've been dealing with since 2019. So if there's any questions, I would certainly, I believe that was the case. And if I'm not correct, Craig or Heather, please correct.
Does any staff member have the answer to that? Was a 1-year contract considered or discussed?
I think if I recollect, and Heather can correct me, if I'm not remembering correctly, I think that anything short of what we've discussed and outlined in front of council was not something that they were going to consider.
Okay, well, we can deal with that when we're talking about the bylaw. If council don't approve the bylaw, then we're not approving the extension. But I'm going to go to Deputy Mayor Clark. Bonnie, you've had your hand up for some time now.
That's fine. Thank you, through the mayor. I certainly understand what Councillor Allen is saying. And then I look on the other side and I think that I don't believe, people can correct me around the table if I'm wrong, but I don't believe we're going to get a lot of people interested in bidding on this contract. We're so small. We have got good service here. It is in, the best interest of our community. I commend staff for getting a 2.5% with carbon tax, with inflation. I think 2.5% on anybody bidding on this contract is more than reasonable. If we do put it out to, ask for a tender on this, then is this company going to come back to us and say, we gave you this offer, but now since it expires in December, and now that we're putting it out there, well, maybe we'd like 5%. So I'm in a dilemma around this. I guess that's what I'm saying. And I understand, Councillor Allen, exactly what you're saying, but I look at inflation and carbon tax and the cost that this company will have for additional fueling of vehicles, the cost of vehicles themselves for replacement. 2.5 is looking pretty sweet to me.
Thank you. And that's the other side of the equation, and something we also need to consider. So thank you. Councillor Powers, did you have your hand up?
I did, yes. Thanks, Mayor Taylor. I am sort of with the deputy on this. I'm coming at it from two fronts. One is I completely agree with Councillor Allen that sole sourcing on a dollar figure of $127,000 is not something I take lightly. But I can also appreciate that the challenges with transitioning, should we transition to a new provider that, you know, may or may not save us in operational and administrative challenge. So here's what I'd like to propose at some point when we get to the bylaw, which is, back to the conversation that was started earlier, is we are unfortunately at this point, we don't have another alternative because the contract expires before we could ever actually get to finding an alternative solution for these individuals, whether that, if we wanted to find somebody else. We're past that time frame at this point. It's not before council in enough time for us to go, if we wanted to a tender/RFP process. So I think if we wanted to do this, then we simply approve it during the bylaw section with an amendment that says that at the end of this contract, we would go to tender. So it'd just be part of the agreement that at the end of this one, we will go to tender. There will be no, we want to get a viewpoint of where the industry is, and we can't do it right now. We're just plumb at a time. And so we embed it in the agreement for next time. I don't know. That's my thoughts.
I understand the reason behind that, Councilor Powers, and I guess I'm going to look to the clerk, the CAO. The reality is 2 years from now, it's another council, conceivably another council. So I don't know whether we can make those sorts of decisions for a next council. How would, I'm going to ask the staff on this one. How would that work, Greg?
Mr. Mayor, we would follow the same type of contract that we signed in 2019. It would be a 2-year contract with an end stop at the end of the second year. So we would have to go to tender at that particular juncture.
You're muted.
Heather?
There's nothing in the agreement that binds the council other than beyond the 2 years. So again, I mean, if it came back to council, there's an option. If we wanted to extend it, we could ask for that, or they can go to tender. So there's nothing in the bylaw that binds council any more beyond the 2 years.
Deputy Mayor, go ahead, Bonnie.
I am in support of going ahead with the agreement, but I feel that staff has heard clearly that anything in this amount of money coming forward in the future, please give us enough time that we can adhere to our procurement policy. So that's my opinion standing at this time. I will support, and then with the staff has certainly heard council. So
okay. Thank you. And I see Councilor Howie. Go ahead. Ken?
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Yeah, just I guess one question I have is, have we had any inquiries about the contract from any other contractors, over the last couple of years? And if we can get away with a 2.5% with everything going out around us, and they have to remember the dump fees went up big time last year. So, having a little increase like that is, I think we're looking pretty good.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Heather and then Councilor Allen. Go ahead, Heather.
Just to answer through you, Mayor Taylor, to Councillor Howie, no, we have not had anybody approach us over the last number of years. I can tell you at the very onset, when we did go into this agreement back in 2007, there was three people who applied to the RFP, and I can tell you that the costs that came in were almost double of what we were first provided with M&M. So the only one that was
You muted yourself, Heather.
I believe back in the day it was BFI, and again, their cost was cost prohibitive at that time.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Councilor Allen, let him wrap it up. We're going to have to make a decision and move on. Go ahead, Mark.
Yes, thanks, Mayor Taylor. And I think Deputy Mayor Clark did touch on this. I would like to request from staff that as contracts come up, that they may look towards single source through the procurement bylaw. If it could be brought forth in advance of in timing, that would allow for this kind of debate. And if we were to turn and give direction to go to a competitive process, it would allow the time to do so. So I can appreciate that. I appreciate the comments. I do understand, you know, the 2.5%. When you look towards the current supplier or service provider, it does look relatively good on paper. And I do understand the growing pains when you move to a different service provider. It's not always easy transition. I do still stand by my fair and open and transparent public procurement process is the part of our fundamentals in the trust in a public institution. And I truly I believe in what I'm saying there. And I think that's something that we should consider as we move through these single source requests. Having said that, when it comes to the bylaw section, can we remove it from the group of bylaws and deal with it singular?
I think there's only the one bylaw.
Oh, if there is, okay. So I'm jumping ahead. So
it'll be fairly easy.
that makes it easy.
Okay, Deputy Mayor, Councilor.
I would like to move, through the mayor, I'd like to move the motion and recommend, just as printed, to move the bylaw to recommend bylaw 2021-47 and move it to the bylaw section.
Very good, thank you. So what I think how we should do this is we just get a motion that we receive the public work activity report and that council authorizes the execution of the agreement with Waste Connections and then refer that to the bylaw section. So Deputy Mayor, thank you, has made that motion, and Councillor Allen has seconded it. All in favor? All in favor, please, of the motion. That's carried. Thank you. Thank you very much, Craig. Appreciate the report. And I know that, Craig, that we are trying to schedule a roads committee meeting. Hopefully we can get that done in the next couple of weeks. And there's a few items on there we'll discuss and bring back for council's recommendations. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving down now to 12.1, which is development update, building and planning reports. Now I know that we have our chief building official, we have our planner, and we have our CAO. So who's going to take the lead on this report?
Mr. Mayor, I take the lead, and I'm going to be really brief and sort of say this is the report. Council's had an opportunity to read it, and if they had any questions or comments of any of myself or Mr. Curry or Mr. Scullion, I would ask that they would direct them to us and at this particular time.
Okay, does either Ken want to jump in with some of the information contained here before we open up for questions? Seeing none. Okay, council, we've got the report here. We've received it. They've certainly been busy. They've already exceeded the projected budget revenue for 2021, and that's a good thing. Questions at either the CBO or the planner on this report? Deputy Mayor?
Just a comment, as you, the busyness of this department, I just through the mayor to Ken, do you feel we're still able to keep up with this capacity coming in? Because I don't see it slowing down personally. Maybe a comment from you, Ken, on that.
You're muted, Ken.
Work.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for the help of everybody in the building on a day-to-day basis between Jocelyn and Heather and Greg and countless others, no, we wouldn't be able to keep up with it. It would be impossible to keep up with it. But by the same token, you know, to say that you might want to bring somebody else in, things will slow down a little bit over the winter months. I don't think you could justify it. I would rather wait till next year and see where we're at, see how things are rolling along now that we have a full complement of staff, because we've been doing without since June with a secretary, and the lady that we hired is just phenomenal. So no, I think I'd like to leave status quo at the moment.
No, appreciate. That's why we ask you. So thank you for the input.
Thank you, Ken. Any other questions from members of council on the report? It is for information purposes and it contains a lot of information. Seeing none, then I just like a motion, please, that we receive the report from the Building and Planning Department. You see Councillor Howie, seconded by Deputy Mayor Clark. Call the vote. All in favor? It's carried. We seem to have dropped Councillor Powers. Heather?
I just got a text from Councillor Powers. He says that lost internet connection, trying to bring back up. So he's working away on it.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much, Greg. We still have quorum and that motion was duly voted on and approved. We'll move down now to 12.2, and I believe the CAO is going to provide us with a COVID update. Go ahead, Greg.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Again, the report is written and we focused a little bit on the work that we have done under our mandatory vaccination policy, and to give council an update on, so our organization is 100% compliant as far as having fully vaccinated staff, members of council, committees, and as well members of our volunteer fire department. The other piece that I wanted to make sure that council was aware of is the sense that that there are some additional changes coming that are coming from Peterborough Public Health as far as the letter of instruction that will take place on the 26th of November. I have so on yesterday, which is not in the report, the approvals came forward related to vaccinations for those ages 5 to 11. And so those vaccination processes are underway, and in conversations between Peterborough Public Health and the CAOs about locations for potential vaccination sites and rollouts. I think we're going to have a meeting with our collective group again this week with Peterborough Public Health. So those are, and then there was a document that was also attached to us that they issued around holiday parties, and we wanted to make sure that people were trying to promote these particular items as far as how people might behave and act during the holiday season in their homes and in their organization. So if there's any questions, I'd be certainly pleased to answer any of them.
Thank you, Greg. Yeah, there is a lot of information there that all members of council and members of the public need to be aware of with regards to public health recommendations. We're not out of the woods yet by a long shot. Welcome back, Councillor Powers.
Yeah, thank you very much.
We just, Nick, we just did the CAO did the COVID-19 update. You have the report. I'm sure you read it. And I'm just opening up now to questions. Are there any questions to Greg on any of the information in this report?
I did not have any on that one, no.
Councillor Allen, did you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Taylor. And question to Greg. And again, we tried to connect earlier, but the reference to 100% compliance in the individuals with presented proof, is that in regard to the 100, like it talks about the 120 individuals with the township that the policy applied to, and then 100% compliance. And those are those individuals. We now have 100% compliance, I guess is what I'm asking in comparison to.
So Mr. Mayor, through to the council, so there were 120 individuals that would have been affected by our particular policy in the various range of services and departments and council and committees. And so what I'm saying to you is that we have 120 proof of vaccinations which meet our policy and our bylaw, our policy that has been passed by council. So we have 100% compliance of our organization with our duly passed mandatory vaccination policy that council passed back in September.
Question mark?
Well, I guess it's, what I didn't understand was that I had been contacted by members of her, and I'm being conscious of employees who, so those employees who didn't meet the mandatory vaccination policy aren't counted in that 100% compliance in this report, is what you're saying.
We don't have any employees that are current employees that
Right.
are not covered by our policy. So we have, and so I don't know what your specific question is, but everybody that is employed and everybody that are council members and volunteer firefighters that are currently in good standing are all covered by this particular policy.
But when I read it, it seemed to me like it said that, you know, all the employees at the beginning of September 20, from September 21st, were in 100% compliance, which isn't the case, but we are now at 100% compliance with those who remain employed.
Well, so I want to rephrase, I want to make sure I'm very, very clear about this particular.
Well, yeah, I do too, because I think we're going to have questions on the report. So,
No, and that's a fair comment.
right.
Is that if you were not in compliance with our policy and you failed to meet the particular commitments related to the policy, then the policy called for us to separate ourselves and terminate our employment relationship with the employee. Okay, so
Right.
what I'm saying to you right now, and that's employees. Now, as far as council members are concerned, as far as committee members are concerned, as far as volunteer firefighters are concerned, all of those particular, we have 120 individuals in our organization. That includes a couple of additional employees that were not in our organization before. And so all of the, as of the 5th of November, everyone that was within the organization had to provide us with their proof of vaccination. And what we're saying here is that 100% of those individuals within the organization have provided us with the proof of vaccination.
Okay, and I think that's where we can just leave it. I think what we can say, what we can proudly say is that 100% of council members, board and committee members, volunteer firefighters, and staff in the township of Otonabee-South Monacan are fully vaccinated. We have done everything we feel that we can to provide a safe workplace for our staff and for our members of the public who come in and expect services in a safe environment. So I think that's very proud. I want to say thank you to everybody who has helped us to achieve that. Now, the reality is if you're not vaccinated, you're not working here. So there's no question that if you're here now, you're vaccinated. That's how we get to 100%. But council made that difficult decision a couple of months ago. And I believe that's helped us to get to the place where we can safely and proudly say that the township now offers a fully vaccinated workplace. I think, council, that's a fair way to sum it up. So with that, I would just simply like a motion, please, to receive the COVID-19 update report for information. Councillor Powers and Councillor Howie, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay, moving down now to finance. We've got a budget review, budget overview review. But this council, this is really just for information. If there's any questions at the end, we can do some high level questions, but as far as getting down into the nitty gritty, any of the particular lines, there's no point in getting into that tonight. This is going to be the first time you've seen it. So we will be getting into that at 2 of our special budget meetings. So I see a couple of hands go up before we even start. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
To that point, through the mayor, you know, looking at time, should we not be forwarding any comments through to staff? And this is more just for an information and, you know, we're looking at 40,000 feet here is tonight's.
That's all this is intended to. Now, at the end, if you have any questions for clarification, certainly I'll permit that. But you're right, Deputy Mayor. If you have any specific questions, they should go through to staff in the form of an email or a phone call. And we will be dealing with the details of this at our next budget meeting on a week from tonight. Okay, Councillor Howie, I think you had your hand up before we start.
Yeah, just a quick question to Greg. I'm having a hard time hearing Greg when he's speaking. So if you're going to do the report, I'm hoping I can hear it a bit better. That's all.
All right.
Okay, I'll make sure that how is this? Is that better?
I can certainly hear the CAO. I don't know other people.
Well, we'll let Greg will let you and Jocelyn get started on the presentation. And Ken, if you are having trouble hearing, just let us know.
So I'm going to go through this really quickly, and if you have any questions of us, then I'm mindful of time, and so we will go through this particular process. So I'm going to go to the next slide, Heather. So what we're going to do is talk about our objectives. Again, a lot of this is what we have spoken with council over the last 3 years. Talk a little bit about Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, our budget snapshot, and our budget moving forward. If you want to go to the next slide. So our objectives here, we've got 5 objectives. Here's the first 3. We really wanted to make sure that we've got a sustainable core budget that are on appropriate costs. And you're going to hear me speak about our basket of services. And so, for our basket of services that we currently deliver, this is how much it costs. And then we're going to continue down the road and offer those services. This is how much it costs. Again, we've talked about establishing fair market for user fees. The third item, which really sort of has been a bit of a bane to our existence here, has been this whole maximizing of leverage. We really, really need an infrastructure to be able to garner money from senior levels of government in order to help pay for some of our infrastructure requirements. Staffing, again, we're going to look at our staffing levels and make sure that we can deliver the services that we say that we're going to deliver. Taking a look at our strategic planning 5-year, at least a 5-year capital budget, and we'll be reviewing our reserve balances and reserve funds. And then we're focusing on our budget, and rather than just sort of a target. So instead of us saying, hey, this is, we're going to look at 3% or 2%, we're going to present to council what we think is the cost of us delivering those basket of services, and we would move from there. So our process will be looking at everything related to our base operating budget for 2022. We talk about supplemental requests. This is the difference. So if we had our core base budget and it costs us $100 to deliver that service, and it now costs $102 this year, we're going to talk about the $2 as far as the supplemental request. We talked a little bit about capital budgets, and then we hope to have everything to council. We're planning to look for budget approval for the 13th of December. So the core base budget level, and as I said, this is our basket of service. This is the current level of service approved by council for all of our departments. And we look at how we're going to deliver those particular items. And we do, and this is where Jocelyn meeting with all the individual departmental directors, look at budget maintenance and look at the actual history of spending, so we're not having conversations about what is not actually occurring in each of these departmental areas. The supplementary approach is the next slide. So how are we going to pay for those services? Are there any requests to any existing levels of service, right? So we're going to say we're not promoting any new levels of service coming forward. And then, what kind of revenues need to come in as far as existing fees are concerned, and revenue sources and changes due to volume and those types of things. Are there any changes to service level agreements that we have with others? And then we'll go through and say, well, if there's a one-time only thing, we're going to spend X number of dollars and we're going to do this particular project, we would remove that particular item from our budget from the next year. So we're going to deal with things corporately. So we're going to have our conversation around, as I said, contracted items, utilities, insurance and policing and those sort of types of things. We're going to be, as I said, again, look at all of these particular items and say, is it a core business or is it a new service or enhanced business? And then council gets to debate how that level of service should be delivered. So as far as the operating budget process, which is the next slide, Heather, do you want to go to the next slide? So we're going to continue looking at things. We started our process, back in 2019 here. We're going to be talking a little bit about Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund. We have talked about efficiencies in the process. I still, we haven't been able to do life cycle budgeting. I'd like us to not lose sight of that, which is where we're putting money aside to do different capital items. And, making sure that each departmental area, that we're looking at that functional response by those directors for their area. As far as the capital budget process, we're in a, 2022 is going to be a difficult year and 2023 is going to be more difficult. So we do our we fund our capital through transfer from reserves only. And we've been less than successful, unfortunately, in garnering senior government money to help us pay for our capital programs. And we're just saying that that's not sustainable. There will not be any phased in assessment growth in 2022 or 2023 from MPAC. So, what we're going to have to do is just sort of pay for what we're going to do based on our changes in assessment from year to year. We're continuing to work with our asset management plan, and we updated our development charges background study and bylaw last year, so that will help us out on our new growth as far as our DCs are concerned. So I just wanted to give you a bit of a historical approach here, and this is really quickly. So in 2019, our approved budget was a little over 7 million. We did almost 3.5 million in capital. We approved a levy of 5.5 million, and at that particular junction, that there was $712 coming from operating going into reserve and to fund capital. And so what we've done is, the council remembers, we changed it so that everything goes to reserve, and then we fund our capital from reserve. So in 2019, we did 2.98%, and we had a total expenditure of just over 11 million. In 2020, again, looking at these, we had a tax increase of 1.5%. You're seeing here an increased transfer of reserve to, the almost 1.2 million, and our total expenditures of 15 million. So we took, we're making the contributions to reserve, but we're not funding capital directly from an operating budget. 2021. Very similar here, almost 7.4 million in our operating budget, almost 6 million in capital, and an approved level of levy of just under 6.2 million. So in 2021 and 2020, we had budgeted for some capital projects to be done and undertaken and funded by grants from the senior levels of government, and that was the arena, and as well our water services that we did not do. So if we didn't do the project, we didn't spend the money, so that money stays within our reserve. And last year we did a 2.18% increase in the $14.7 million that we would have total spent. So here's capital, and this is how we funded our capital. So 3.4 million, there was money coming from levy, and we transferred from reserve just almost $900,000. 2020, again, a higher approved budget, including those two major projects I spoke of. We were going to have a reserve transfer of just under 1.6 million and a transfer from development charges of 190,000. Well, last year, we had a $6 million approved budget reserve transfer of 1.2 million. And as you can see here, we would be paying for some of our capital through increased costs from development charges. So a couple of the terms that we wanted to really spend time with council about is this whole issue about what are discretionary items and what are non-discretionary. So the non-discretionary items, which is council must pay, and discretionary ones that council might decide. So our must pay, police, salary and benefits, insurance, or curbside. Council may decide around maintenance. You set the level of services for fire services. I was asked today about the council composition thing today, and so if you are a 7-member council, you could look to go back to 5. We are a 5-member council. You could choose to make it larger. We're not advocating that, but that's what we mean by what council may decide around these particular services. So here's the big 7 that we talked about in 2019. So at that particular juncture, we talked about OPP and library and Orca insurance and curbside as far as $4.1 million worth of expenditures. At that particular juncture, we had OMPF at $500,000, $525,000 that was going into our operating budget. And we had to spend, $720,000 on roads. It left emergency and fire and some parts of general government. So really, at the end of the day, out of $7 million, we were really dealing with $5.5 million that council has typically not a lot of room to maneuver. So the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund. So this is some information that is known. So our allocation for 2022 is $520,000, so it's an increase of $13,200. And this gives you a bit of an idea of where we were over the years going back to 2017. So we talked about the strategy so that we could, that all of this money had been directed to our operating budget. So in 2020, we approved $200,000 as far as transfer to reserves. Coming from operating or coming from the levy, and replacing $200,000 that we would typically get from OMPF, which would go into reserves. So we approved another $100,000 in 2021, and so it left us for $203,000 for 2021. So we want to have a discussion about a transfer to reserve in 2022 and some sort of number for 2023. This capital life cycle thing, we're almost here at the end. We still have to have a conversation about how do we do this, and we probably won't be able to do this till maybe 2023. Is how much we put a part of the phased-in gross amount and put it into roads and bridges or recreation or public facilities, and you put in that much money per year in a certain selected group, and then adding additional monies every year. Again, this helps us to grow some of our infrastructure requirements that we're looking to undertake. So as far as the next slide, so we're going to be again focusing on some of these high-level priorities. There were some corporate restructuring savings in 2018, and we really want to take a look at our strategic approach to future planning, going forward. So in 2021, so this is what we looked at last year. So we didn't have any change in salary and benefits, and no change for OPP. Library was a small amount of money. Orca was no change. Our increase for insurance was $65,000 last year. We got a small increase in OMPF. We contributed $100,000 as far as the OMPF special levy. Last year, we received from our assessment revenue increase just under $60,000, and we budgeted for utilities and fuel. So really, the number we sort of debated last year that we got down to was the $134,000, which is the 2.1% increase. So this is what it's looking like in 2022, and we'll get some reports that will come forward to council on the meeting for the 29th. So as it stands now with our contractual commitments for salaries, benefits, OMERS and that stuff, we're looking at 63,000. There was no change for the OPP. We've not heard from the library board, it's not yet met, so we just sort of plugged in a number from last year. Orca was a small amount of money, so we're not looking at a change. Another $64,000 in insurance, getting a little bit more money in OMPF. We're looking, as we said, if we plug in $100,000 for a levy, and we're still waiting for the assessment revenue to come in. That number, we get our assessment roll on December the 6th, and we look at new revenue coming in from rentals from the arena and fuel and utilities. It leaves us a bottom line of $146,000 that we're presently looking at right now. So we take that and said, okay, what's our increase? And you look at what are transferred to others. Utilizing those numbers, our transfer to others outweighs our overall increase. So for municipal purposes, at this juncture, we're looking at having almost $30,000 less in monies going into our operating budget for municipal purposes, and everything going to transfers to others. So this is our moving forward. We are looking at following this process, and that we'll have for the 29th, we will have reports coming forward and with specific reports about those items that I just spoke about for the 29th. We'll make any additions or deletions to budget items by resolution, and hopefully have a budget bylaw to council for December the 13th and a water rates budget to council for the 13th. So again, we're here on the 22nd, as I talked about, we're having our meeting here on the 29th. I'm sorry, we're looking to have a special meeting on the 29th, starting early at 4 o'clock, and wrapping up on December the 6th. And then hopefully have enough information that we would be able to bring the budget bylaw to you on the 21st. So that's a really rough and quick spin through our budget process. And if there's any questions, we'd certainly be prepared to answer.
Thank you, Greg. And this was reviewed by the Finance and Personnel Committee last week. The special budget meeting next Monday was going to start at 4. Was that 2 hours? What time did you have set aside? 2? So 4.
We had scheduled for 2 hours. That's what we had a conversation with council about.
Okay. So just some high level questions for clarity or information. Councilor Allen, you had your hand up. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, thanks. Greg, just a question on process maybe, and you can let me know. There's a couple of things that we had over the last year talked about. I think there was motions put forth, and one was being playgrounds and taking a look at playgrounds. And another was water access points or boat launches, and there was a big discussion around those. And I know that that staff are working towards looking at reports on such, but it was just something I thought I didn't want to lose track of going into this budget discussion. And I don't really know what the right approach is on that. And the other request, because I think this is the first year that we've seen this, we are under collective agreements for the majority of those salaries that are shown. And last year when we talked about that, I think we talked that it would be, we'll have those discussions separately as far as what's under collective agreement and then the portions of salary that aren't. So those are just a couple of requests, I guess, I'm making as we move forward into the budget discussion process. Just some things not to lose sight of.
I could, Mr. Mayor, just quickly. So playgrounds will be considered under the capital budget.
Yeah.
As far as water access points, as we are looking to do a report as far as them having implications on the 2022 budget, we'll have to have that determination. Salaries, we'll have a report at the, and talk about the salary budget or collective agreement. We have a 1.75 percentage cost of living adjustment that has been already approved. So that number that we just provided to you includes that particular provision. And as well, council approved our group benefit plan as well. So that's another 3.4% that is included in that value that we see.
Your audio is just fading out a little bit there, Greg.
No problem. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, that's better. Did you catch that? Catch that, Mark?
I did, yeah. Thanks, Greg. And I look forward to those discussions. Thank you.
All right, Deputy Mayor, you had your hand up, Bonnie?
Yes, through the mayor to Greg, we did ask for a report to come back in fall regarding, I think what Councillor Allen spoke as far as the playground consideration for Keene. Should we just be, will that be coming forward? Do we need to put an email out to you and how do you want that direction? Who's supportive or what, Greg? I'm interested in seeing numbers around that.
Mr. Mayor, through to the Deputy Mayor, as I mentioned, that those particular items will come forward in the capital budget and the capital budget forecast. And so the direction's been received. We will just bring forward those particular numbers for consideration in the capital budget.
Okay, any other questions from members of council to either Jocelyn or Greg? And if not, really, we just need to motion to receive the budget review overview process, and we'll have a discussion next week starting at 4 o'clock on the 29th. I'm seeing Councillor Rowell and Deputy Mayor Clark moved and seconded it. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay. Move down now to bylaws. We only have one bylaw. Can I get a motion, please, that bylaw 2021-47 be read a first time? I'm seeing Howie and Allen, all in favor? Carried. I'd ask the clerk to review the bylaw, please.
Bylaw 2021-47 is your waste, your curbside pickup contract, Waste Connections of Canada, Inc. It's being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a waste management agreement for household, domestic, curbside collection and disposal services.
Thank you. Questions to the clerk on the bylaw? Councillor Allen, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Taylor. I just requested this be a recorded vote. Thank you.
Okay, recorded vote to the request of Councillor Allen. So could I get a motion, please, that bylaw 2021-47 be read a second and third time, signed, sealed, and the corporate seal attached, and that will be a recorded vote. Moved by Deputy Mayor Clark, seconded by Councillor Howie. I'll ask the clerk to record the vote.
Can we speak to the motion first?
Oh, I'm sorry, certainly.
Yeah, sorry, Mayor Taylor. I wanted to just comment on item 1.2 in the bylaw. So 1.2 speaks to the this agreement, should we agree to it, would allow staff to enter into up to 2 additional single-year extensions beyond 2023. So I just wanted to make sure that we're all clear on that this actually could turn into a 4-year agreement, not a 2-year. And speaking to what our concerns were earlier, do we want to remove line 1.2 and simply have this as a 2-year agreement as stated and not have those extensions? I'm not sure, Greg or Heather, what type of implications that would have from your logistics perspective. You're saying none, okay. I think previously there was some, oh, sorry, go ahead, Greg.
Well, I just pointed to Heather. Heather was the one that Heather in dealing with. I don't see this as an item, right? Heather, right? So.
That was not a discussion point when we discussed the contract, but I mean, it was in there and it went through their legal team. So I don't know, with having a change to it now, it would have to go back through their legal team to see if there would be any issues with respect to us removing that clause.
But both sides have to agree to the extension. It's not just, they don't just get to say, yes, it's extended. We have to also agree. So I don't see why leaving that in there causes any trouble. It's just that it just may provide council that option should they choose to exercise it in year 3 and year 4. Heather, go
Okay,
ahead.
so this,
If I can just add, it wouldn't be Waste Connections coming to us for an extension. It'd obviously be us going to Waste Connections for an extension. So again, having that clause in there does not bind council in any way other than just the 2 years. Again, it's just an option should something arise at that point in time wherein an extension is the best choice rather than go out to sole source or rather than go out to an RFP. I mean. But there's nothing binding in there at this point in time with respect to leaving that in there.
okay. All right, I just wanted to make sure that based on our previous conversations that at the end of this 2-year agreement, council would have the opportunity to discuss whether or not a tender process would be appropriate at that time. Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, and council's been pretty clear, even though it will be during the first year of the next term of council, if I'm doing my math right, it's still that the agreement is to be brought forward in time so that we have the ability to go to tender. Council has the ability to go to tender if they so choose. Okay, so are there any questions, any other questions on the bylaw? I certainly didn't mean to skip that part. Okay, so Councillor Allen has requested a recorded vote. I'll ask the clerk to conduct the call.
When I will be calling by alphabetical order, so please say yes or no when I call your name. Councillor Allen,
No.
Deputy Mayor Clark,
Yes.
Councillor Howie,
Yes.
Councillor Powers,
Yes,
Mayor Taylor.
Yes,
The motion's carried 4-5.
thank you very much. Okay, moving down now to correspondence, there are 3 pieces. The first one is a COVID resolution, testing requirement resolution from the town of LaSalle. What is council's pleasure on that one? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Information.
Receive
Receive.
information, receive?
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor has made the motion to receive for information. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Howie will second it. Call the vote. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay. Matisse, municipality of Matisse, property assessment. What's council's pleasure on that one? Councillor Powers, go ahead.
support.
Move to support by Councillor Powers. Do I have a seconder? Do the motion's lost. There's no seconder. Do I have another motion? Councillor Allen, go ahead.
To receive?
Motion to receive the correspondence from Matisse. Deputy Mayor Clark, are you seconding that? Call the vote. All in favor to receive? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, the third one is from Cupie regarding the owner's pension, and there's a little comma in there saying the CAO will provide comments. So Greg, I'm sure we're all interested in your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make council aware. So as you can see that CUPE's making this reference to all municipalities in Ontario. And I currently sit on the, as council is aware, I sit on the board of directors of the Ontario Municipal Administrators Association. So this item came to our board. And so we presented, we have an individual on our board who is our designate to deal with OMERS and OMERS related issues. So I just wanted to make council aware is that we posed 5 questions to OMERS related to their performance. And we had some comments, coming back. So what we're looking forward, I guess our recommendation from that particular institution and organization, and me as a member, would that council would receive this particular report for information and that certainly that there are quite a number of municipal-based employee organizations that are, I guess, encouraging owners to be a little, you know, more structured, I guess, about how they sort of deal with, you know, with their investments and those types of things. So the comments are being made by the appropriate groups, and I just wanted to share that information that I had with council.
So Greg, do you have a recommendation to council for this particular piece of correspondence?
I think it would be appropriate for council to just receive this report for information.
Okay, thank you. I see Deputy Mayor, go ahead, Bonnie.
Yes, a motion to receive.
Deputy Mayor has made the motion to receive this piece of correspondence. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Powers is seconded. Call the vote. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, information package, just a couple of pieces there. The first is the budget notification that's been posted. And the second is some information, a news release from Enbridge Gas that relates to some service provided to Otonabee-South Monaghan Township. Any questions on the information package? Motion just to receive it, please. Powers and Howie, all in favor? Carried. Nothing under, well, under other matters, there's nothing under other matters, excuse me, unless somebody's got anything. The last thing is the land recognition statement that I am recommending that council approve. I'll just give you a little history here. We, Heather and I sat down a couple of times and reviewed land recognition statements from a number of sources, and there's a lot of them out there. I wanted one that did a few things. I wanted one that was unique to Otonabee-South Monaghan. I didn't want it to be just the same draft generic recognition that we often hear. I wanted one something that we could say in 100 words or less. I wanted one that I really like the concept of considering the next 7 generations that I first learned about through First Nations meetings. I really like that concept, and I wanted to have that in our land recognition statement. And we wanted one that could be adopted by any group or organization in the township just by simply changing council to whatever the appropriate group might be. So it could be used at any function if it was wanted to. We met with, I met with Chief Carr personally to review the final draft. We had several back and forth with Chief Carr prior to that. Certainly the first draft we sent her, she had several recommended changes. We incorporated those into it. So Chief Laurie Carr has looked at this and really likes it, and does not recommend any more changes to it. So that's about all the background I think I need to provide. Heather, is there anything that I've forgotten?
No, Mayor Taylor, I think you covered everything.
All right, thank you. So I'm just going to open it up to questions or comments from members of council. Go ahead, Councillor Allen.
Thanks, Mayor Taylor. First I want to express thank you for working on this behalf of council and the township. I think it's something that's a worthwhile exercise, and I do really there was something that really resonated with me because it is somewhat different than any that I've heard before, acknowledgements, and the point that asked those to educate themselves on the First Nations history in Canada, including the Treaty 20 and the Williams Treaty, it seemed a little unique to me. I hadn't heard it before, but I do really appreciate those that statement, and I think I hope it encourages some who hear this statement to go ahead and educate themselves on those treaties, because both very important documents to us in the history of our nation. So again, I'm supporting this. I think it's unique, and I really I think it fits Otonabee-South Monaghan well. So thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Clark, you had your hand up, buddy?
Yes, pretty well iterating what Councillor Allen has said, but I really like, I like the fact that it's unique to us. I like the fact that it's very respectful and acknowledging the need that we can all further educate ourselves. And as you said, Mayor Taylor, you have consulted with Chief Carr and has her approval on this. So all those things I think are very important. And thank you for everyone. And I can't see that this will be unanimous. It's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Powers, go ahead.
Nothing really to add other than to reiterate everything that's been said so far, and just wanted to pass along my thanks for the mayor and those who have participated in putting this together. I think it's an important and worthwhile endeavor, and I'm glad to see it before us tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Howie, Ken.
I also would like to, my thanks for everybody involved in doing this. It's very important to our community, I think, and people are going to lead by the examples.
Okay, thank you for those comments. I can tell you, like anything that's well done in this township, our clerk has a hand in it, so Heather Scott gets a lot of credit for helping out. If council is prepared, what we need is a motion that that the land recognition be read of official functions and the amendment be brought to procedural bylaw, so this can start at the meeting in January. Deputy Mayor Clark has made that motion, and I see Councillor Howie is seconded.
However, Mayor Taylor,
Yes.
I would just like a recorded vote for this. I know it will be unanimous, but I think for the record.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we've got the motion to move and seconded. Before we call the vote, Deputy Mayor has requested a recorded vote. 2 recorded votes in one meeting. This could be a new record.
Again, as I call your names, please say yes or no, and I'll begin by going alphabetical. Councillor Allen,
Yes.
Councillor Howie,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Clark, sorry.
Yes.
Councillor Howie,
Yes.
Councillor Powers,
Yes.
Mayor Taylor.
Let me think about it. I'd be a yes. Thank you very much, Council. And FYI, we have extended an invitation to Chief Carr to come to our first meeting in January, where she perhaps could even help us read the land recognition statement. She will be in Jamaica at the time, so she really appreciated the invitation, but said she probably could easily find a member of her council to come in her place. And I said, absolutely. So if we're able to resume in-person meetings in January, that's how I hope to get it set up. So with that, unless I'm missing something, Heather, we just need a motion to adjourn. Got it? See Councillor Allen, Councillor Powers, all in favor. Thank you very much, Council. Good meeting tonight, good discussions. And if not sooner, we'll see everybody next Monday at 4 o'clock.